A very good evening and a warm welcome to all our guests and participants for the session today. Hi, I'm Namrata from TiE Pune team. TiE is the world's largest not-for-profit organization fostering entrepreneurship with 62 chapters, 21,000 members across 17 countries. In India, we have 16 chapters, 10,000 plus entrepreneurs associated with us, and 3,000 plus charter members. Today, TiE Pune has a vibrant associate member community of 350 plus members and 70 plus charter members. I would like to now take this opportunity to introduce you to our today's guest of honor, Dr. Anand Deshpande. Dr. Anand Deshpande is the founder, chairman, and managing director of Persistent Systems since its inception and is responsible for the overall leadership, strategy, and management of the company. Anand holds a BTech in computer science and engineering from IIT Kharagpur and, and an MS and PhD in computer science from Indiana University. As a true technology visionary, Anand's strength lie in the identifying and investing in next generation technologies and encouraging internal entrepreneurship to ensure that persistent system stays at the forefront of technology innovation. Anand has been the driving force in growing persistent system from its inception in 1990 to the publicly traded global company of today. He has been recognized by his alma mater IIT Kharagpur as a distinguished alumnus in 2012 and by the School of Informatics of Indiana University with the Career Achievement Award in 2007. Prior to founding Persistent Systems, Anand began his professional career at HP Laboratories in California, where he worked as a member of technical staff from May 1989 to October 1990. Anand has served numerous positions at various professional and not-for-profit organizations like NASSCOM Executive Council, ACM India, where he was the first president, SCEP, and Pune chapter of CSI, CIS Pune Zonal Council, and as a trustee in Computer History Museum. Currently, he serves as a trustee of the Persistent Foundation, member of the Dean's Advisory Council in the School of Informatics of Indiana University, and the member of Executive Committee at MCCIA. Anand is the founding member of iSpirit, India's first product think tank, started with the vision of creating a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem in India. Anand is also a founder member of Inter-Institutional Inclusive Innovation Center, IFOC. IFOC is an independent not-for-profit entity which acts as a platform of proactively scout, showcase, and handhold technology innovation, especially aimed at the base of the pyramid. With members of his family, he has established the Asra Foundation, a not for profit entity which focuses on creating self employment at scale. Anand is married to Sonali and has a daughter and a son. Thank you, Dr. Deshpande, for giving us this opportunity. The host of the session today is Vineet Patni. Vineet is a seasoned, experienced insurance, banking, healthcare, and digital business professional. He has also held CXO level board positions and member of managing committee and worked with board and shareholders of leading and complex joint ventures. Now, without a further ado, I would like to request Vineet to take the session ahead. Thank you, Vineet.
Welcome to, thank you, Namrata. Warm welcome to all of you. Thanks, Anand, and thank you so much, Dr. Phatak, Ganesh, Ajay, Sridhar, Ashok, and Vinay for joining the session today. This session, I think, for everyone will be fairly takeaway-led. So we would, focus on the learnings, and of course, we'll talk about Anand and his journey. And of course, I would request other guests to jump in at any point of time, but we would certainly, reach out to you as the conversation progresses. So today's session, we will be, running it through in four key themes. The first is staying relevant, building a company, building your career. So we will focus on that. Second is taking you and your business into the second orbit. Third, creating employment and opportunities for everyone. And of course, Anand would be talking about technologies of the future. If he was 30 years old right now, what would he be doing? And there would be very interesting conversation towards the last part of the session.
Hey, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And really, this is a conversation amongst friends. And I know a lot of you are who are on the TiECon thing as well. I've interacted with many of you in the past. So this is mostly a family affair today. So feel free to butt in and contradict, discuss, whatever.
Absolutely, Anand. So that would be fantastic. And, I must, the best way to introduce Anand is, last, I think, 10 days, I've been having conversations with people whom he knows well or he's been associated with. And I think the best way to introduce him is he's a university in itself. So any part of Anand you touch, there is a lot to learn. And for me, it's been a great learning journey over the last 10 days. And we'll try and focus on that and pick that up in the course of the conversation today, Anand. So Anand, quickly to jump into the first quick part, you always speak about being at the right place at the right time, but you don't know when. And I somehow saw that your stock price is also at its 52-week high. I know, couldn't keep my eyes off because I do track stocks a little bit, and it's just rocking. So from 500 plus 52 weeks, back to now 2,400. Looks like the MSS is timed at the right time. So what's your thought on it, and how happy are you?
No, I think it's an amazing run that we've had, and what is most exciting is that in the last 12 to 15 months, when this has gone up, I have had a new CEO running the show. So it is very clear that I was slowing the numbers down rather than making them go up. So I'm very excited the fact that I can sit back, watch, and look at the numbers rather than having to numbers, meaning look at the price rather than looking at the day-to-day, quarter-on-quarter numbers. And this is far more fun than running it on a day-to-day basis. So I'm quite enjoying it. But these stock price numbers are all kind of a little bit inflated at times, and one has to sort of take that into the right spirit. But yeah, I mean, it's been a good run.
No, fantastic. As always, your humility and your that's what I hear a lot. But we will go on as we discuss more and more during the course of the session. So, Anand, the second very important thing that I picked up in conversation was there are no half measures for Anand. I keep hearing that. Even Anand's signature is full. So when you sign, there is no shortcuts. There is a complete signature word by word. But, what does gray mean to you? Because people say, hey, Anand is a black and white person. He's very clear. But I just thought, before we get to the first I
don't know why you want to start with gray. Let's start with some bright colors. But the point here is that see, it's like this. When we are running our own businesses, we are doing this out of choice. Okay, so we are not doing it because we have nothing else to do. We are doing it because we want to do this. And if you want to do something, then you might as well do it right. So that has been the philosophy of everything that we started out to do, and Sridhar has been part of it from the early days, and Professor Phatak has also seen it. So our whole intention was not about how fast can you grow or what can you do, but whatever you want to do it right was certainly the objective. And I have sort of believed in this pretty much all my life in terms of saying, jo bhi karna hai, thoda style se karo, otherwise usme maza nahi aata hai. So the journey is exciting, the activities are exciting, so you might as well do it right, and you might as well have fun doing it. So that's been the whole focus of things. And in that context, it's much easier to sort of be, go to what is exciting, what is colorful, rather than getting into the grays.
No, that's fantastic. So one more point before we get to the first theme. We always talk about changing tires when the car is on the run, and actually, you use the word upgrading the aircraft when the plane is on the flight, and that looks very much more scary, right? And much more difficult. So I know that we would talk a lot about entrepreneurship, but is there something that I just want to know, what does a day or a week for Anand look like, right? Or what do you end up? How do you end up spending your time? I've heard a lot about it, but maybe it'll be a great learning for entrepreneurs to see how your day looks like or a week looks like.
Yeah. So for the last 2 years now, I have moved off being the CEO of the company, right? So I've had more time to think about other things, and I've been in a mode where I'm saying, hey, what am I doing and why am I doing what I'm doing? So I've had more time to think about many of these things. And one of the things that I have found in general, and I meet a lot of entrepreneurs as well, is that, one of the biggest challenges for growth of companies has a lot to do with the scaling of the entrepreneur. So if the entrepreneur is not able to scale and keep pace with things, then it is that much harder for the company to keep growing with it. And I'll recall Ajay as well. So Ajay and I, we started our business at the same time in 1990. And he had just come back from Iowa, and he was studying with Ajay Electronic Products. I had just come back from the US, and we used to exchange notes, and we still do all through these 30 years about all kinds of things. And none of us had the opportunity. None of us, actually, both of us are not MBAs, or we don't have like a business training or any of those things. And unfortunately, for various reasons, we always felt like today's business, tomorrow's business, so important. We can't just take off a few weeks and go do a upgrade course or any of those kinds of things. And in retrospect, maybe we should have. But the fact is, at the time when you are running the show, you are sort of, every day seems important and you're running around. So you pretty much learn on the job. So what I was reflecting through this, and I'll tell you why this became interesting as a reflection, is that when we were trying to do this CEO transition that I did about 2 years back, I looked at a lot of individuals who say that, who's right for a CEO job and who is not. And this time was different. I was not looking for an entrepreneur. I was looking for someone who was already at a stage where he could be hired as a CEO. And then you say, why do certain people make it and why don't certain other people make it? And what do entrepreneurs do? And if I had stayed on doing what I was doing, would I have been hired by Persistent at the point I was hiring another CEO? And it's a very interesting question to ask yourselves. And then it comes down to the fact that what should I keep doing on an ongoing basis to stay current and be active without having to go to a class, right? So you can't go to Harvard and spend 2 weeks, and that would have been nice, but I never did it. I should have, but the reality is we all learned on the job, right? So when you are learning, you are asking people and sort of experimenting on your own business as you go along. And we made a lot of experiments, I must say. And, it's been good fun, but it is at the expense of the company in many ways. So that is what I meant by saying that, as an entrepreneur, all of us need to keep learning on an ongoing basis. I have learned many things over the last 30 years, and I thought it would be good to share some of those during this session today as to what exactly happened and how did I pick up. And some of these tricks, I think, are things that people can apply. And I think it's important that we all scale ourselves while the business scales, because otherwise we would not have a role to grow in the business. I don't know, meaning, let's take Ajay, you've been part of this from the beginning, right? So we have been kind of similarly tracking each other now for the last 30 years. So I don't know what you think about this topic as well.
No, I completely agree, Anand. I think the learning on the job has been the most exciting thing in the journey. And quite frankly, let's also not forget that learning from each other was perhaps even more interesting. And I know in the audience here, a lot of people have learned from your journey. A lot of people have learned from other people like ourselves. But at the end of the day, I think the academic training that you referred to, I don't think is what brought success for all of us. It's the on-the-job thing, looking at things on a day-to-day basis, putting off fires, strategizing for the next step, and making sure that we are ready for that. I think that's what took us forward. And you especially, I think I've watched you and have had the privilege of looking at Persistent even before it was formed. But the most important thing, I think, is your ability to take risks on the go. That is something that really helped quite a bit. And there's a lot to learn from that, Anand. So I completely agree with your thoughts here.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. In fact, Dr. Phatak also spoke some very strong values that Anand brought in when he was, I think, the initial part of the journey, maybe 92, 93, and you want to just share and ask him a few tough questions, I think, Dr. Phatak.
I have stopped asking him tough questions for quite some time, ever since I failed to enthuse him to join as my colleague in the Department of Computer Science. He had, of course,
You can ask me now, sir. I may be more willing now.
but
Now,
anyway,
now he
it has
knows
been
too much, Anand.
an exciting journey. Rather than asking him tough questions, I would like to share with you a couple of things which I learned from him. One was an incident late night when we were preparing for the VLDB 96 conference, and I got an email report from a student, and I suddenly started looking at it, and I was disgusted. I started typing something. Anand asked me, this was at night, 2 o'clock, by the way. Anand asked me, what are you doing? I said, this idiot has sent a report with so many mistakes. I'm correcting that. And he says, don't do that. Because if you do that, he will never correct his own mistakes. Just return it saying that, please correct and send. Now, this is a very important lesson for a teacher who intuitively goes out to help people to understand that it is necessary for a teacher to try and make others realize their mistakes and correct them. Now, this is a great learning, and I had it from Anand. I have so many things. I mean, I can hog 2 hours to speak on him, but I will stop at the moment at this
Yeah,
juncture.
so thanks, sir. Actually, sir has been a big mentor for me for the last 30 years. As soon as I came back, he was one of the earliest persons I have met, and I have not let him off. I can also tell you how to work with Professor Phatak. Okay, it's not easy to work with him. He only works with what is on the top of the stack. And I'm going to share this not just because I know him well enough to do this, but also this is how you need to work with other mentors also. So it's very hard to get his time, especially now. Maybe it's a little easier, but before that, it was impossible to get his time. So I've had many occasions when I have specifically gone to Mumbai and traveled with him wherever he's going in his taxi. So, "Arey, kahan ja rahe ho, sir? ठीक है, मैं भी आपके साथ आ रहा हूँ." When you are going somewhere else, I would just tag along to go to the airport with him, because that 1 hour that you can get with him when he's sitting next to you in the car is unbelievable, right? So these are sort of things that you have to do when you want to sort of keep the mentorship going, right? And he's been somebody I've been tracking on a very regular basis. So at least a few times a year, I go and spend time with him. Now that he's on my board, he sits on our board, so he knows what's happening on a quarterly basis. But on personal and other level, I use him as a mentor and a sounding board now for the last 30 years. And this is, I think, one of the important lessons that I wanted to share as part of this thing, that as a founder or a business person, or anybody for that matter, as you grow and keep yourselves updated, you need gurus and mentors and friends who are willing to sort of poke holes into your strategy and theory. And you can't go to someone all of a sudden and say, give me some advice, right? I mean, that doesn't work. How will you tell them something? So they need to have enough of your context so that when you are in trouble, they should come back and help you. And one incident I want to share with Professor Phatak was that he has written a fantastic letter for me, which I'm not going to read out today, but I have that letter in my drawer at all times. And one of these days when I write a book, this will be a big part of it. But I had we had tried lots of experiments, and we had one company that we had created, and we had like a huge fight and all kinds of stuff going on. And then, you knew that Phatak was available. So I could call him and say, "Sir, takai karu." And then he gave me a very clear path, and that really helped me a lot. And we had significant growth for the next several years because of that. And the key message that he said was that stop fighting amongst each other. The fight is not amongst you, it's amongst the rest of the world. So you're not fighting amongst each other. What's the point? You have to fight in his words, Firangs, okay? So, and I'm going to use that Firang word very carefully, but just say that you're fighting the Firangs together, not just fighting amongst each other. Just forget about it. Take a little bit of a loss, keep moving. The clutter that you will avoid will help you significantly in the future, right? So one of the problems that you get into as an entrepreneur a lot, and this is a very important learning as well, is that you get cluttered with things. There's just so many things going on at all times that you say, okay, I could do this, I could do that. Here's another one, different things all the time. So, removing that clutter is a very important part of an entrepreneur's journey. And I have really been reflecting on this topic quite a bit. And I believe a lot in writing things down on this stuff. So you basically have your own mind map in some sense of where you are and what you are doing, and then you are in a better position to navigate. So going back to your question that you asked, right? You are in the right place at the right time. That's absolutely correct. The problem is you don't know at that time that you are at the right place at the right time. So when I came back from the US in 1990, half the people thought I was stupid, okay? Meaning maybe I was stupid in some ways. I had a pretty nice situation when I was there, but Today, when I look back, people tell me, oh, you are a visionary. But of course, at that point, I never thought I was a visionary. I was just going back because I wanted to be in India. Okay, beyond that, there was a whole lot of an agenda at that point. But what I found and learned over the years is that if you have a plan and if you have a map of where things are and where you want to be and all of that stuff, then at the time that that opportunity arises, you are ready for accepting it and moving along with it. So that is really the main benefit of having a plan that really I find very valuable.
That's fantastic. So any specific views or any anything that you want to leave back with people? Because what I saw was one the mentorship, so having mentors in the earlier years and going through it, right? And of course do mentors evolve? Have you seen something change? And very important, I think that's a great lesson for entrepreneurs, because they must focus on building a network of entrepreneur of mentors or sounding board. What's your specific view on that?
No, absolutely. There is a need for having mentors, and I believe in mentorship. I have several mentors that I use, and I've used this story in the past, but I'll share it. It's kind of cute. So I'll explain this to you. I sort of classify mentor into 4 different parts. Okay. So, and I want to use mythological examples for doing that because it's easier to visualize. So the first round of mentors are the kind of, in all of our families, we have a puja room or whatever puja place, and we have a set of deities in there. So there is Ganesh, there is Vishnu, there is Shiva, and everybody is there. Each one of them performs a very different role. So when you are running a business, you need a mentor group. You don't need one mentor. You need a mentor panchayat, some 5-6 people who are who bring in different aspects of your life. So Fadak sir was always doing some of these things. I had a few technical gurus on which I would work on. There's a bunch of friends and then their kids and different people who bring in different points of view. So that's one part of the mentorship stuff. The second kind of mentors are those which are, I would call the Eklavya Dronacharya mentors. Right? So there are these people who are gurus whose work you read, but they don't necessarily know that they are mentoring you. So I may be reading somebody's work and online and whatever. So they are my guru in that sense, but they don't know I'm their shishya. So that's the other kind of mentorship. The third one is the interesting one. So you need a Narasimha type mentor. Okay. So Narasimha had this amazing thing he did was he found Hiranyakashipu, he found themselves at the right point at the right time. He had the right tools. So, you can't just carry a Narasimha with you all the time, but you need him when you need him. You need to be able to get to him. And that requires the need for your other mentors to get you in. So if the Vishnu avatar happened because Vishnu was there, right? So it's important that you have that ability to create that Narasimha when you need him. When you need the Narasimha to appear, it needs to appear there. And that's sort of where it's an important one. And finally, if you have the Dharma Yuddha that you need to do, then you need the Krishna to be with you. And he also didn't come big to Arjun just because Arjun asked him. Arjun had a relationship there. So the relationship part is very important, and you have to build it as you go along. And you can't just find a mentor when you need it so you have to build this over a period of time. And this is something that I've done very meticulously and deliberately. And that is something that I have found very useful, and that has been part of the learning process as well. So you learn from other people because you share your things with them, and then they tell you what needs to be done. So that's really how I've looked at it. And in this stage of my life, I'm looking at giving back as well. So I've been doing my bit to say that, okay, fine. A lot of people benefited and I benefited from their guidance and counsel. So I need to give back in that same context.
No, that's I think a great guidance and having a group of mentors, I think very important. But you yourself is a mentor to mentors to many. And one thing I kept hearing a lot about you, Anand, is that your ability to build relationships, your ability to hold on to them, and your networking capabilities are phenomenal. So was that something that happened way later in the career, or was it by design? And can entrepreneurs really work on it? Can they develop this? What are your views? And I think, Ajay, you must butt in here, because I heard so much about Dr. Anand on this, so that would be great to hear a lot more, and it's a great learning for entrepreneurs.
No, so I have been a good networker pretty much early on, and I always give credit to my grandfather actually. So my grandfather was a hugely successful networker, And one of his philosophies was that when you ask somebody to do something for you, they also enjoy being asked to do something for you. So it's a mutual thing. So I used to remember he was a income tax commissioner when he retired, and he was a lawyer when I was young growing up. When he would travel from Pune to Nagpur by train, he would have someone bring him dabba, meaning lunch box or dinner box, in Bhusawar, in Jalgaon, in Akola, and then in Nagpur. Okay, so not that he ate dabba every place, okay, but the fact that they would bring it him because they would feel good that he asked them to bring it to him, right? Meaning it was a mutual thing. So they would come because they had respect for him. He found it very interesting that he would be in touch with them. He would make them do something like bring lunch dinner box. He used 4 dinner boxes within a 12-hour journey, but that's not the point. The point was he was able to meet them. They were happy that they did something for him, and he was an amazing networker. Okay, so all relatives, all kinds of people he would be in touch with, and he would have a lot of people coming in. My grandmother used to make chai like 6-7 times a day because there's somebody continuously there, and somebody would be always there with chai there. So this is sort of what I learned from him. My father is also actually a very good networker, but very different kind of networking than my grandfather. So this is sort of, I would say, partly genetic, but I must say that I have thought through this a little bit further along to say, how do you leverage your network to be valuable? Okay. So as a salesperson, which is what I am right now, or I've been for the last many years, I find that we meet a lot of people. The question is, why do you remember some people and not remember some other people? So this is a question that is worth doing a thought experiment on at all times. You know, anytime you meet somebody, you go through a meeting and then you find that I remember this guy. So why do I remember him and not someone else? We meet so many people at all times, right? Why do we remember some people and not some other people? So this is a worthwhile thought experiment for everyone to do. And I have come to this conclusion that if you sort of challenge the person, you get into a discussion where they are sort of thinking about you after the meeting, right? Then they are more likely to remember you. Because if you just have a transaction and you get done and that's okay, that's fine, you'll not remember. So you have to keep the thread going in some form or the other, and that's an important activity that needs to get done. And I found that to be very useful, and I deliberately do it now. So I would provoke the guy in a meeting and all of that stuff. Because see, when I'm selling the way I'm selling, I find the best sales deals that have happened for us have happened when the customer has called us saying, hey, I remember you had mentioned this to me. I think we need something in this area. Perhaps you could help me. And they call you. So that is when the best deals happen. So for that to happen, you need to really make sure that you are able to do that. And another experiment, I think when I may have been part of this experiment also that I have tried out a few times, is that when I used to sit in an office very close to my office, and you'd get people from outside who are coming to sell to you. So somebody wants to sell some insurance, some whatever, somebody shows up and he's trying to sell you. So what I've done in a couple of times is I would call people who are sitting around like Vinay and others, say, hey, Vinay, come here. So he sit in the room, right, with this guy, and this guy is trying to sell him. He has never asked what is the context, why you're doing this, what are you trying to sell. They have this presentation that they want to kind of spew out. And it's a completely waste of meeting. Nobody remembers any of those things that happened, right? So the whole concept of networking has to be to say that, I network with you because I want you to remember me. You want me to remember me. It's a relationship that we want to build, and we want to further that relationship, and we want to maintain that. So that is really the game that you're trying to do, and you have to engage with your partners to make that happen. Sorry, a little bit long-winded, but Ajay, you wanted to comment
Anand,
on this, right?
Since you're on
Yes.
sales, I had one question for you to share with everyone.
Yes,
Clearly, you have
Sridhar.
scaled Persistent big time. So can you talk about how you scale sales of the organization? You are a great sales guy, everyone knows that, and you enjoy it. But there are other people in the company who need to sell too. So how did you scale sales?
It's a very, very tricky question, Sridhar. I've fired more sales guys than I have hired. Okay, so
Vinay
that
is
is one of the
laughing.
key as well. Okay, so that is one of the key, is also to make sure you are able to get rid of salespeople who are selling themselves before they sell the company. And but the fact is, it's a hard job, man. We don't do very well in hiring sales teams, and I have experimented a lot. Is all I would say, Sridhar. And you know this, and we have tried a lot of people, and we have fired a lot of people at Persistent. The only thing I must say at Persistent that I would say is very important is that, on one side, we have been very kind to people. On the other side, we have also looked at what is right for the company at that time. Okay, so we have been nice about firing people, but we have let people go because we felt that at this point, moving forward, they were not the right people for the company. So it has been an evolution in some sense, right? Meaning you get people who do their job, they take the company to the next level, and perhaps, they are not able to scale beyond that, and then company needs different people. And that's pretty much what I would add to this, Sridhar. I don't know, you have something more that you want to say?
No. I mean, it's one of the secrets of every business, right? So
yeah, I think a lot of people don't fire people fast enough. And that is something that I also feel myself I'm guilty of in many cases. But, sometimes you can be nice about letting people go, and that's important. But I think sometimes you have to have that conversation that, hey, it seems it's not working out. Maybe let's look at some other ways to move this forward.
Yeah, so, how did you build yourself in taking some tough decisions? So one is, of course, your ability to network, and you evolved and you continue to do well, which is value driven. But I think, taking some tough calls or tough decisions at times, people do get carried away. And, is there something you want to leave back with entrepreneurs or some learnings there?
Yeah. See, my avoiding conflict is really my default option. Okay, I don't like to get into conflicts to the extent possible. Personally, I'm not the guy who likes to keep fighting with everyone all the time. So that's not my default position. That said, so let me come back to another interesting concept that is, I think, worth sharing with entrepreneurs. I think a lot of times we all get very stuck into the fact that what is me and my company, there is no difference between the two. And this is a very important concept, and I think we should discuss this. So the idea is that the company has its own entity, and we as individuals have our own entity. And we as individuals and founders, we are responsible for making sure that the company is successful on its own as a company. And we should not be holding it back in terms of our aspirations and our company's aspirations. So those two are very different things. So what happens when it comes down to firing people and all that, or asking people to leave, or any of these hard decisions? You have to look at what is right for the company first, okay? Once you decide that that is the factor on which you are operating, because I'm making a decision on the basis of, on the behalf of the company, then I have to do what is right for the company, not necessarily what is right for me, okay? It's a very important distinction here, but I want to make that very clear. A lot of times we hesitate in doing things in a certain way because we bring ourselves in the mix of it. Okay, so when you are trying to fire someone, or when you have to deal with these sort of adverse situations, there's one thing I tell people is that, you can't hug and shoot at the same time, okay? If you do that, you'll kill yourselves. So the point is to have that distance where you say, okay, I'm going to do a data-driven meeting. I'm doing this for the company. I'm representing the company, and I need to make on behalf of the company these decisions, and I'm going to go make it. So it's not personal at that point, right? So this is very important that you are able to make that differentiation, saying that, you and I, we are friends. We will remain friends. Okay, we are not going to go away. But the company needs us to make this decision, and in this context, you should leave right now. Okay, so that's the rationalization that needs to happen. And I spend a lot of time deliberating these kinds of things. I'm not the trigger hungry guy in many ways, I would say. But yes, meaning it is something you have to do, and you got to do it. You got to do it because it's right for the company. And this concept, I think, is very important for every aspect of it. And I want to share this in the following sense that, we tend to get too attached to being we and the company being the same thing. And this differentiation is something that I want to share in a different context, and Sridhar would remember this. So Sridhar had just come in. We were doing an internal offsite in one of these places, and we were talking about things. And when you joined, we were about 25, 30 people probably.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah, and we had sort of grown rapidly, and we had gone to 50, 70, something like that. So we had some good people in the team. We had some fairly good senior techies, hard case people, and all that stuff. And we were sort of looking at it saying, yeah, if we do more, then it'll be more headache and more things and all that. We're slowing them. And one of these offsites, one guy came and told me, say, hey, what is this? This is all good for you, but what is in it for me, right? You're telling me all these things to do, but what do I get out of this? What do I see out of this? And that was an eye-opener for me. So I took almost a year to make this transition between my company to our company. And Sridhar was a big part of that, our company thing, because before Sridhar came, we had a set of people who were there, but it was very different. Sridhar had an opinion, and he was sort of working with me rather than working for me. All the other people were not in that category, and that is sort of when we decided that it took me a year to make this transition from being my company to our company. And that was a very important transition for me. And if people are able to make that transition, it makes life very different after that. So I stopped coding in a sense after that transition. I took a 4-week vacation, went over to HP Labs, spent some time there and came back and sort of felt, okay, fine, I need to now be a more 100% sales guy rather than be a techie doing some sales and all that. So it was an important difference that happened at that period. And that thing I have carried through with me. So when I'm looking at my new role, I'm looking at it in the same context, saying that, hey, you know what, at this point for what I want to do and what the company needs to do, I'm not necessarily in the best position to continue to do what the company would want me to do. So it's better off that someone else does it, right? So this differentiation becomes very critical.
So I'll just maybe Anand, it's a great time, and we'll just toggle back to and try and relate it to a professional who is in a mid-career stage, and we see that a lot of professionals come in, they are very excited, they do too well in the initial part of the career, and they somewhere start to drop off, and then we'll go back to building the culture, and I will have Ajay and others really grill you a little bit on that. But I think the first portion, I think very relevant for a lot of people, and something that you want to give advice of what you did to yourself for how you've been grooming people who've got associated with you, because post 30, post 35, post 28, people go through this, and we've seen that what we call midlife career crisis, etc. So some thoughts to professionals who are in the session today.
Yeah, so this is a long topic. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I have a 2-hour session just on that topic. I'm going to give you one-line summary on it. I have sort of come to the conclusion that for people who are in jobs, especially, the first 10 years, you should focus on learning and networking. That's saying that you should not continue. The reason you say it in the first 10 years is because if you don't figure out how to do it in the first 10 years, it's very hard to learn how to do it later on. You need to continue to do this, but these are the most fundamental skills: how to learn on an ongoing basis and how to network like crazy. So these two things people should learn in the first 10 years. Second 10 years, what I tell people is that by the end of your 20th year, you should be able to say that you are an expert at something. Okay, don't tell me that I have 20 years of experience of working in some company. You should be able to say, what has that 20 years of experience done to me? So I am now this or that, right? So that's what I tell people after 20 years. In the third 10 years, I tell people that you should figure out where your corner office is going to be. Here, you need to adjust your aspiration to your reality and say, okay, this is where I want to be in 10 years time. And the path to get to that from where you are to that one should be no less than 3 steps. You can't have more than 3 steps in a 10-year between 40 and 50 years of age, or between your third 10 years. And in the last 10 years, I've been very influenced by this particular author, and I encourage you to look at his podcast also. There's a guy called Arthur C. Brooks. Some of you may be very familiar with him. He has a podcast on, he's a professor of happiness at Harvard Business School. And he has written a very interesting article targeted to people. He's sort of my age, So he talks about it a lot. And he's written this article to people in their early 50s, telling them that, hey guys, your professional decline may be earlier than you think. Okay. So that's the name of his article, and it's on the Atlantic magazine. So it's targeted to people in the midlife situation, saying, hey, you think you may be at your peak, but maybe you are already in the declining situation. So how do you evolve yourself so that you remain relevant after you are 60 or after you are past that? And that's sort of where I've been thinking a lot more, because I'm 59 right now. And I'm saying, hey, with one more year to go, I better figure out. So I have some people here who are senior to me, like Ganesh and others, who I have to figure out from how do you stay current and relevant past 60, right? Meaning till you're 50, 55, anyway, you're chasing something. But after that, you have to do something different. And that's sort of where I've been thinking a lot more about, how you manage your career. But this is something I'm going to write about one of these days, and be happy to discuss on this topic. But I found that this works well amongst the sort of the tech or the job career type people. Of course, this doesn't make sense for someone who is a sportsman or somebody like that, because, of course, life is very different there, or to different kinds of careers. But at least job careers that I meet people, this works, I think.
So maybe Ashok has done many Mr. Ashok Korwar has done many sessions with you, and you want to talk a little bit about putting an individual into the second orbit rather than a company. We've always heard about having a company move to a second orbit, but how do you get an individual into a second orbit? Anything you want to ask Anand or you've experienced, Ashok?
No, that's a very good point, because all the entrepreneurs I deal with, none of them really spends enough time on themselves. So they essentially do not grow as fast as they need to, and that becomes a drag on the company. Anand, on the other hand, has always focused on learning all the time. So one of the things Anand could perhaps share with everybody is, what do you do to keep abreast? What do you do to keep ahead of the game, really? It's not just being abreast.
Okay, so let me share the following, right? So this is something Ashok knows well. What I end up doing is that I'm a sucker for, people invite me, I show up. Okay, so I'm a Brahman guy, so khane ko koi bulata hai, main pahunch jata. So that way. So somebody invites me and I'm a sucker for these kind of things. So what I do is I usually tempt people who invite me for a talk to talk about something I have no idea about. So I say, hey, 6 months later, I'll talk to you about non-fungible tokens. I have no clue about it, okay? But I have committed to someone that I'm going to do this, right? So that drives the heck out of me then. For many weeks for that, after and before that, I would read a lot, I'll go follow up. And my strategy usually is as follows. So one is I first sort of pick some crazy thing that I want to learn and I say, okay, I'm going to do a talk on this. So I find that talk is a good motivator for me. It gets me into a format where I get a set of slides to come be prepared on it. And I usually say, okay, I'm going to do a 3-hour tutorial on some topic, whatever it is. And I do this all the time. So every year I have 1 or 2 of these things that I go fix for somebody, and then I go find myself doing. So then I'll go build like 370 slides, detailed work, find out what is going on, and I do some homework. And then I go find friends who are experts at this, and I'll invite them to poke holes into this. So I sort of figure this out, and then I'll go catch up someone, and people are willing to give me, thankfully, that is a good thing, because I can share with them this deck and say, you know what, this is what I've been working on, but I would like to get your comments or whatever. So I'd spend 2 hours with a few people each and then get some more beating up on that topic. And by the end of it, now I have a good set of slide deck, and now I have a good set of presentation, and I have a good opportunity to tell somebody what is going on. The reason I do this is not that I want to tell them something, it's purely selfish. I find that I learn the best when I'm asked to talk about it. Okay, so when you have to talk about something, then it sort of forces you to bring it down. So then you get a 3-hour version, and then somebody said, no, I can't give you 3 hours. I'll give you only 15 minutes. So then it's even better, right? So then you say, okay, how do you take all this 3 hours of stuff and cut it down into 3 slides and give them the 3 bullet points that are important for getting that job done? So that's sort of where I've been working on this continuously. So every year I have some project like this that I've committed to someone that I'm going to come and do a talk on this topic. So right now, NFT is my next big one that I'm working on.
Great. So we'll ask you a little bit towards the end.
Vinay, you want to say something?
Yeah, Vinay, go ahead.
So I just want to kind of tie into this, having seen this live multiple times, right? And what he does in that 15 minutes, right? He'll compress that to 2 minutes. And in the next sales meeting, he'll be talking about that too. That's just connecting him to anybody who's met him, remember him? That is one of the things is, they learn something from each one of the meetings, right? And then it's very easy for me as a sales guy after that to follow up because, hey, they already believe they're missing out on something if they're not working with him, right? So
correct. So that is exactly true, Vinay. That is exactly true. And what happens is now, so let's say, I'll give you an example. So I figured out this NFT stuff now. Next sales meeting, I'll go and ask the company, hey, what are you doing about NFTs? Okay. So maybe they're doing something, maybe they're not. Okay. But then you say, no, what should I be doing about it? Then you get that opportunity to give them a 5-minute blurb on it, and they'll not forget it. They'll come back to you with it. So this is something that I found to be a very effective way for me to do this. And Fadak sir has also seen some of these decks. I keep sending him. Every time I make something up, I send him one. He's one of my sounding boards on these items.
Great.
Just to kind of also give a small anecdote, right, on this one. The other thing he knows is when not to talk more, right? He'll just leave the leading question, and the other person assumes that, so I still remember, Twitter was launched maybe 1 week after that. We were crossing Main Street and, the San Francisco's and getting into a meeting with another major company. And he just mentioned, social as a very, very abstract word. He knew that on the tech side, if they get engaged, he'll tell 10 more things that will educate them. But from a business perspective, connecting that this is a field that you need to get into, right? He would just leave it open and then learn and absorb and then go back into the next meeting that we are attending. It's a sale that happens.
Fantastic. No. So a quick question here. Vinay, you talked about uncertain times and 2008, right? Is there some learning you want to ask him something, which is very relevant today and which could help, you shape up better or manage, better as an entrepreneur in Altizon?
I think, definitely. I think that was a defining moment, at least in my professional life, going through that and on the front end with Anand. I think definitely the question, touching to what you said earlier, right? We literally reset our entire sales team at that point. And I think we fired everybody apart from 2 or 3, luckily survived that. But, you give a lot of trust to a lot of young people as well at that point of time, right? And especially in those years that I had the privilege to be part of it, there were a lot of us who really didn't have the experience to be doing what we were doing on the sales side, or some even in terms of running some of the tech stack, delivery engines and all of that. What gave you that confidence to be able to do that? Because I'm sure from every other angle, you met a friend of yours in the valley, they'll probably be saying, hey, you have this bunch of young guys, what are they going to make happen for me, right? So how did you shape this, right? Connecting this, how did you give faith to people that didn't really probably have the credentials for it beforehand? And in these uncertain times, 2008 in particular, right, you latched onto the 4 technologies and all that. So how did that all?
Okay, so I have a good question actually, Vinay, and you maybe have, so, a lot of these things happen because there is no other alternative in many cases. Okay, so you end up saying, I don't have money, market is down, where do I go? I need to go do this. So see, I'll tell you where the difference was. So one of the things that I think I learned a lot in this, in the 2001 crisis, I sort of figured this out a little late, okay? And I sort of used that in the 2008 crisis as a preset template. And I tried using it again this time around in the 2020, this whole COVID crisis. So I'll tell you the thing we learned. So first thing we found is that 2001, when the market went down, right, and we were all sort of struggling, I was sort of very desperate saying, oh, my customers are going away. I should go find new customers. And I tried very hard to get new customers. Somewhere in the halfway into it, people told me, when the times are desperate, nobody's going to give you business. They don't know you. How are you going to go about it? So the thing you should do right now is to not go chase new customers, but go hug your current customers. Even if the company goes down, they'll land somewhere else. Okay. So that was a good thing that I realized. So what I found out in 2008 was that we needed to have more people going and hugging more people in the market than we could otherwise. And we had no money to do it as well. Right? So you have to do it as cheaply as possible. So pick the best guys who are around and say, hey, could you go and spend time with the customers? Let's go do it. And I'll share with you a couple of interesting things that came out of that thing. So I met 150 to 200 CEOs of customers that I would have never met before. Okay. So normally when we work with companies, we used to work with the VP engineering. And you meet the VP engineering, you go to the CEO and ask them, hey, Persistent, yeah, you have good people. Somebody knows him. The guy has no clue what we do normally. So it's kind of very disappointing, right? So I'm a big part of his business, but he has no clue what I do. He has no idea what I do. And I've never met the guy and all of that. So everybody was asking for discounts. So I used that discounts to go meet these guys and say, hey, give me a meeting. And I met 150 different CEOs. And I'll give you a cool understanding of how CEOs think very differently from non-CEOs. And this is a pretty interesting concept. So 3 things I'm going to tell you about how CEOs think very differently from the rest of them. And if you're selling to CEOs, how should you sell differently from non-CEOs? The first thing is that all CEOs have a small number of things that they care about personally. Everything else is delegated. So normally product engineering, outsourced product development, all that stuff is delegated to the VP engineering. The CEO says, it's not my thing. I'm really not dealing with it. You go deal with that guy. So if you want to have a conversation with the CEO, you better have something that is in his relevance list that you are talking about. Okay, so there you will say, you have to create something that says, okay, can I do something for you in India? Can I do something for you? Sales, whatever. So that was first thing. The second interesting thing that I found is that most CEOs are top line focused and not just bottom line focused. So my offering is, oh, I'm going to reduce your cost in engineering. Yeah, great, but that's not my focus. That's VP engineering, CFO's focus. My focus is how do I grow revenue? So what are you doing to help me grow revenue? So that becomes a CEO's point of view. And the third thing I found is that CEOs are very relationship oriented, not transaction oriented. Right. So if you go to a CEO and ask him for an introduction to his competitor, he'll give it to you. The sales guy will guard his terrain. He'll not let you touch anyone else. But if you go to the CEO and say, hey, can you introduce me to your competitor? Then if you have a relationship, he'll give you that connect. So a lot of times what I found is that CEOs are very relationship oriented. So they are interested in getting to know other people. So they are very happy to network. So if you find out that, hey, you go to a CEO and say, do you know so-and-so? And he says, no, I don't know. Would you like to meet him? Both CEOs are happy to meet each other. Okay, so this networking works very well at CEOs. CEOs love to network. And this is an exploitable opportunity. Everyone loves to network. You can make some connections here and there. You become important as part of that networking value. So those are the various things we learned a lot in 2008. And that really helped us a lot. Meaning you guys did a fantastic job of engaging with the customers. And we really engaged very broadly during that period. Travel was, of course, easier at that time. So I was on the plane a lot. And so were other people at that point. And we really grew quite a bit after 2008.
Thanks, Anand. So I think that's a great learning, a lot about building relationships, keeping the network going, and building an organization which lasts both the tough times as well as the growth times. But I'll quickly move to you're doing a lot about creating employment opportunities for everyone, and of course we have Dr. Ganesh Natarajan also with us. So I would also ask Ganesh to ask you a few questions or share his views also, and maybe you talk a lot more about the ASRA and or your views about creating employment. It's a huge challenge across the country, and what could entrepreneurs or others in this session contribute towards it?
Sure, Vinita. Anand and I have been friends for almost 21 years now, ever since I moved to Pune, and even before that.
Even before that, you've been very active in the NASSCOM circuit, and I knew you when you were still there. So early 90s, you were one of the great NASSCOM people, and I was one of the bachas at that time.
Yeah. I remember you joined the NASSCOM Executive Council and got bored in 1 year and left. So you were my hero for that.
I was there for 6 years, man. Anyway, let's not go there. But
no, so Anand, I have two questions. One is a comment, because when I moved to Pune, I think it was Ravi Pandit, Anand, and I who were running any company of any size, and that size in those days was maybe 150 crores, so really small companies. And I think we all grew it to the 3,000, 4,000 crore level, almost parallelly. So that was great fun. But one thing I've always noticed about you, Anand, which is true even today, in the last conversation we had on the phone 2 weeks back. So I think the ability to multitask effortlessly. Even today I meet entrepreneurs who say, oh my God, I'm so obsessed with my company. I have no time for doing anything else. And when I finally build my company, then I'll do something else. But in your case, whether it's academics, as you rightly said, researching completely new topics, networking, of course, networking you could call it part of the CEO's role. And beyond that, investing in entrepreneurs. We have the wonderful young Parul Ganju on this call today. Both of us spotted very early and invested in. And I'm sure you have many, many other entrepreneurs you've invested in. And last but not the least, social. I remember when we first asked you to join the Pune City Connect board, you were the first person to say yes. So you, as you rightly said, you never say no. Maybe it's learning for you, but it's amazing. So at what stage did you realize that, look, life is not sequential, but is a set of parallel activities which you should pursue, each one of them to its fullest extent?
So it's a tricky question. So, first thing, the first many years, right? So I'll tell you, let me give you a story on where I came back, and Phatak sir will remember this. When I first came back from the US, one of my objectives at that point was to say that I want to stay current with the technology field. So I had pledged to myself. So a lot of people told me you're killing your resume. So I told them, no, 10 years from now, my resume will not be compromised for being in India. So that was my only goal I had when I came back, right? So one of the things I started to get into was this conferences and VLDB, and we did a lot of work together, and ACM and all those sort of tech events that I was very actively involved in from the early 90s. And it was sort of one of those things that I've been very excited about. I love meeting people, and I like meeting different kinds of people. And I find these are all very nice ways to network in a nice way in many ways. And I found this to be very valuable. Actually, my contribution in the VLDB context of running these two events has been immensely valuable to me as a person and as to the event, the community that we have been part of. And also, I would say that even the company has benefited from this. So it's been something that I've always done in over the last 30 years, and I find that this has been very useful for me as well. In terms of how do you think about these things, I want to share a little bit of things that I already mentioned in a way. So I've been writing notes every year. I tend to, typically in December or so, I sort of look at, what am I doing, where is my life, and where am I headed type stuff. So I make charts. I usually have a mind map, and I look through it. And there are things I wish I would do and all that stuff. So there's this list that keeps coming up. So I'll tell you how Deyasra happened. So Deyasra was something that I always wanted to do something where, Bill Gates has done this, ye bhi karna chahiye, wo bhi karna chahiye. So you should have our own foundation here, all these things. But you're running Persistent day to day, you don't have enough time to do all these things. So you say, okay, fine, let me park it. When I retire, I'll do that type stuff. And at a point of time, I reached this thing when I crossed 50, I said, hey, retire, theek hai. Whenever it happens, it happens. Why do I need to wait to retire to do some of these things? Can I not start them off, right? And that's sort of where I started to say that let's not wait for these things to happen, and let's get these things in parallel. And I actually, even now, I actually have too many things going on at the moment. I need to shut some of them down. And I have a list of about 18 to 19 different things I'm working on at the moment. And every weekend, I tend to look through my list and say, okay, what are the actions on each one of them? And then I triage them. I spend then about half an hour, 40 minutes every week on trying to make sure I'm not missing out on the bunch of things that are going on. So it is a lot of planning in that sense. But I do what I need to do. And then if I don't get it, so if I know what I have to do and I have a list of things I need to finish this week, then I'm far more effective and efficient than when I don't have that list with me.
No, but Anand, even on Deyasra, for instance, and it kind of brings out one of your qualities. Because I remember, I mean, of course, been associated with you and Deyasra and of course, Sonali forever. And I mean, you've made so many subtle and not so subtle shifts in entrepreneur parlance, you would call it pivots. But you've actually changed at the right time, and you brought it to a stage where it's a very well accepted entrepreneurial framework today. So again, I mean, where did you find the time to really take course corrections as you went along, even in the social sector, which was not your priority? How did that work?
So 2-3 things, as I said, again, the same formula: talk to people, talk to lots of different people, read some stuff, read half of things, and then chat around with other people who tell you various other things. And access is relatively easy for me at the moment. So I was able to meet people who had good ideas or who were willing to sort of listen to ideas and experiment with them. And then once you sort of create a mission, actually, I find that people come to you, right? So Pradnya and all, it's not like I went to recruit her. She found something going on. She came over one day. I shared with her what I was doing. Said, no, I really want to do this. And she's been on it for the last 7-8 years. And then you let everyone sort of come up with their own things. It churns, right? So it's not like you have a plan and you have this grand vision. There are directional vectors in which I know I want to go on, or what is my focus in there. And then rest of it evolves as you go along. And a lot of it happens through the conversations I have with people like you, or say Ravi for that matter. And, Ajay has been a part of many of these conversations, and lots of different friends, where you sort of ask these questions saying, hey, why am I doing this? What is this going to benefit? And is this worth my time? So, at the end of it, we have only so much time in our life, right? So we have to use that time to deliver the best output that you can deliver. And what is the most impactful thing that we can do in the context of where we are in India today? And that's sort of where it came down to saying that, jobs is very important. We need to really do something. And I said, okay, if I've made some money and if I'm going to contribute a certain amount of money, what should come out of it? So a lot of it was a iterative process that went in, and more than anything else, it's not like one has a formula, but there is a vector you are trying to target, and what vectors you want to go after. Then everything else sort of follows in the process.
No, I think that's the beauty of conversation with you, Anand. Every time I have a chat with you, and this must be maybe our 50th chat, I learn something new. I mean, and as you rightly said,
it's mutual, right? It's mutual. It's mutual all the time, right?
And in my case, when I want to learn something new, I write a book about it. In your case, you create 75 very deep slides. So it's actually very interesting to see that happening. But I just wanted to say for the audience and people who have not interacted with Anand so much, that if any of you think this is like a lifetime award conversation, forget it. Because Anand may be 59, but he has like another probably 30 years of very active, very innovative, very new idea thinking coming. And I'm sure Dr. Phatak, my guru, will agree with me on that one. Because that is the way Anand is. And I think, as they say, is picture abhi baki hai, dosto.
Yeah, true.
No, absolutely, very much. And I'm not, see, as I said, somebody told me this story around Persistent also, which really got me thinking for the last 2 years. And you might know these people, so I'll not name them. But the idea was that, you have to decide whether you are the horse, or you're going to be the jockey on the horse, or you're going to own the horse, or you're going to have multiple horses or whatever else. So I found that, from the Persistent context, I was the jockey in the business. So I have decided now that I don't need to be the jockey. I'll hire many jockeys to run different horses, and I'm the owner of the stud. Okay. So I'm not thinking about myself as one of those jockeys anymore, but I definitely want to own many such horses with different jockeys running it. And that's really where I'm headed. And these jockeys, I'm on a long horse run, not the short ones. So I have a bunch of ideas on which I'm trying to find jockeys to drive and ride with them. And I'll back them to the extent that they need to be backed. So that's really my plan.
But Anand, right from the beginning, we have noticed that you were very successful in getting the team which believes in your vision, which shares the vision with you. And you've been able to create almost like multiple people who think like and the culture of Persistent, the kind of discipline and ethics of Persistent. We see so many companies around Pune, but you guys are really unique. Even the alumni of Persistent still get the feeling that this is our company. So how do you make that happen? First of all, making people believe that it's our company, making people believe in your vision, making them do things, think similar to what you do, and at the same time, you yourself are very good at adapting your thinking based on the inputs you get. All this cannot just be genetic. There has to be some efforts in taken to make it all happen. We'd like to know more about how did you achieve that? That's very interesting.
Man, you're asking hard questions. I have not necessarily distilled this down to 5 bullets to tell you that this is what you should do. Okay. The fact is, I've been part of the business, and every one of us has been working shoulder to shoulder in various ways to get things moving. And it's been more about we are all working together to make that happen. So I think empowering people, letting people do what they want to do without necessarily being too intrusive on it, has been one of the things that has helped in making this to happen. And generally, we have had this thing that, you should treat other people as well as you would expect to be treated, right? So if you do some basic things like that, by and large, people understand that, you're doing things between, so you're doing certain things because that's right for the company. We all have the same mission and same goal. We are all working for the company as peers, not necessarily as, you're not working for me, you're working for Persistent, right? That difference that I said between working for an individual versus working for the company, and we all agree on the mission of the company. We have a purpose. We are trying to go in a certain direction, and people are all thinking that as long as we all have the same purpose, we are in the right place. That helps in getting these things to happen. So it's not, I don't know, maybe Ashok is the management consultant guru. He may have a better distilled way of explaining what makes persistent culture. Maybe this is a good topic to write about. But no, I don't, maybe Ashok, you have something you want to.
No, I think very simply it is what you said, that you have always treated people as equals, never as your subordinates. And Sridhar would, I'm sure, vouch for that. That you don't hire people to work for you, you hire people to work with you. And that is what makes a difference.
Very interesting.
Anand, I have a question for you here, Vinit, if you permit me.
Yeah, absolutely, Sridhar. Go ahead.
No, Persistent is a very different company from the time it started, clearly from the time I know. And you seem to have remained pretty much the way you were. So something must have been kept intact throughout these spurts and up and down cycles of growth. So can you comment on that? What did you hold dear throughout the period? And give advice to people in the room about that.
No, I think core values is sort of very important. I think doing the right things, as I mentioned, again, some of these things I have stayed on to. We've been very clear about, what is gray, what is black and white, as Vinit mentioned early on, and we've been very sort of upfront about telling people what we expect at that level. And by and large, beyond that, the details on exactly what needs to happen on a deal or whatever, those are things that have evolved. People have evolved. New people have come in. Just to give you a sense, right? We had, Sridhar, we had 3,000 people in the last 3 quarters. So almost third of the company is like less than a year old, right? Meaning it's just crazy right now. But all the same, I still believe that all those who have come in have come to Persistent as a company and not just to, just to an organization. So they will become part of the company and they will feel like they are Persistent, even though we are all online. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that, we've been doing this for over years, and by and large, people sort of have gotten used to the fact that we are all working together rather than working for each other, and the whole basic ethos that goes with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I'll just maybe we talked about the Asra in the interest of all the audience. We have a 1-minute video. It's a short one. Namrata, can I ask you to just play that and then we move to the next quick.
मेरा नाम चंद्रशेखर माने है। मैं प्रोडक्ट टेस्टिंग एंड सर्टिफिकेशन का बिजनेस करता हूँ। मेरा बेसिकली ट्रांसमिशन लाइन प्रोडक्ट्स एंड डिफेंस सेक्टर में मैं प्रोडक्ट सर्टिफिकेशन करता हूँ। मेरा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का नाम टिस्कॉन टेस्टिंग एंड रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट है। हम लोग जब
After completing BE in Mechanical Engineering, I gathered 6 years of work experience with reputed companies and then ventured into entrepreneurship. I had a dream of establishing a company of my own. With the joint efforts of me and my partner, Mr. Atul Savre, Tiscon Testing and Research Institute became a reality. For a testing lab, the machinery required is very costly, and we struggled for funds. But with Deyasra's help, we got the required compliances and created a good funding proposal which got us a loan that took care of the machinery and helped kickstart the Tiscon Testing Lab. Tiscon Testing and Research Institution today stands strong on 3,500 square foot covered space and is also certified by the National Board. It is India's only lab which offers a testing facility to industries in various sectors like automotive, power and defense. I would like to tell all the aspiring entrepreneurs out there to dream big and make your dreams a reality with your hard work and determination.
Thanks, Namrata. It was a very short video on what Deyasra does, but Anand, running a large organization like Persistent and then thinking about creating jobs, taking care of so many entrepreneurs. How did what is it that's going on in your mind, in terms of employment generation? Because we always talk about IT companies and a lot of the new age organizations are destroying jobs. So just that point before we move to the most interesting part of the conversation, a very important part of the conversation, which is the technologies of future.
No, so, where we are right now, we have this very large number of young people in the country. We have 25 million people at every age group in India. We need 16, 18 million jobs. And I believe that most of these jobs are going to happen through self-employment and individuals starting to become self-employed in some form or the other. And urban services is going to be a really big segment. So this is one fact. The second fact is that I think two important things that one needs to note, that we don't have just a quantity problem, we also have a quality of jobs problem. So unless a family makes at least 25,000 rupees per family, there is no way you can get off the poverty circle. So we really need a large number of people in our country today, families. I'd say more than half the families in India don't make enough money to say that they are on that positive upward cycle. But that is easily possible if we are able to create people who are self-employed or who have destiny in their own hands and take it to the next level. So the whole idea was to see how to not just address the quality problem and the quantity problem. Those two problems we need to address. And then, sort of being where I am, I want to do this at scale and want to make this happen. And this was the whole motivation for the job creation problem that we have. And I think I want to stretch that even further to say that I somehow believe that the gig economy is going to be the way things are going to happen. Companies and this whole work from home is going to become work from anywhere. When somebody is working from anywhere, you don't know if he's really working for you as an employer or he has 3 other things going on and all of those things. So eventually it's going to come down to, as long as I'm getting what I'm getting, I'm fine. Why should I have to employ you full time. So just like movies are made with a set of people who kind of work for that movie, and the movie is disbanded, people go on, people are going to become gig workers all through their life. So this is going to be an important skill. I think Ganesh has an opinion on this topic, I'm sure, but I somehow believe that the gig economy is going to be the way we are going to see world moving in India, and we'll see more sort of individualized jobs, and it's going to be everybody's responsibility to stay abreast and become an entrepreneur.
And usually, Anand, I completely agree with you on this one, because even what we are now doing in lighthouse communities is actually training across 3 categories. First are people who are wanting to be employees and finding jobs for them. But increasingly, there are a lot of gig workers coming even from the slum community, surprisingly, who are wanting to do multiple jobs. And of course, what you mentioned, nano entrepreneurship, micro entrepreneurship, we're doing a lot of work with Accenture to make that happen. So you're absolutely right. So I think the future is going to be very different place from what we've been used to in the past.
So Anand, I keep hearing about your Saturday club. We know you have a very busy week, but what is this Saturday club, and how can people reach out to you, or what do you use it for? You've been giving back.
Yeah. So I'll tell you where this came up from. Okay, so what I find is context switch is very hard, right? So meaning you're trying to do something, somebody wants to meet you, you want to respond to this, that, whatever. So I started to park on all the non-persistent activities to Saturdays. That's how it started. So now what I do is every Saturday I sit, meaning now it's all online, but otherwise I would go to the office and sit there for 4 hours and meet people, whoever is on my calendar, basically. And what my strategy now is with small businesses or other people is that I meet people on a Saturday. They come in, if they find it useful, they can come back, otherwise they don't come back, but I don't carry them around with me. Meaning I don't think about them after the 30 minutes. If you say, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so? If it happens in that 30 minutes, it will happen, because after your 30 minutes are gone, someone else is there and I've moved on. So this is really the model in which I'm operating. But yeah, many people come for 30 minutes. I am able to be very full for them. I'm fully present. I give them whatever they're looking for, and that's the end of it. So like this, I meet a lot of people. I get to learn a lot of different things, and I find it very, it's a good learning experience for me. So I really enjoy doing this in a way, and that makes me also accessible. So anybody who wants to meet me, I tell them, go get on my Saturday calendar. My assistant is there who puts in 30-minute slots. And if you get a slot, I'm there for you. It's not that difficult to get a slot, actually. So, maybe within 2 weeks, you'll get one. So normally you write to the assistant and you'll be able to get a calendar slot from me. And what you want to do in that 30 minutes is up to you. And, that's the way it is.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So you do find a lot of time, and, people in the group can access and
I wouldn't say a lot of time. It's, maybe a few hours, 4 hours in a Saturday is what I do for this. And you meet 8 people in that, not quite 8, but 6 people, 7 people you can meet in a 4-hour slot.
That's like 24 people in a month. So that's a lot of people. So Anand, before we move to, to the next topic, I think, just for the audience, we have one of the companies, Ahamune, where both Anand and Ganesh have invested, but Anand has been there with them from day one. She's Parul Ganju. She's also been TiE Women winner in TiE Pune, as well as at the global scale, she was runners-up. So she has a small message for you, Anand. Can I request Namrata to just play that?
If one were to describe Dr. Deshpande in a word, it has to be guru. He is a guru for all us budding entrepreneurs, showing us the way to solve a problem and to manage crisis, but leaving the decision making to the founder. I think what is most striking about him is the fact that even though he has achieved so much, he's still so grounded and approachable. I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for being a fantastic mentor and a role model. He is a leader who truly inspires.
Hey, thanks, Parul. Parul is an amazing entrepreneur. Okay, meaning she's one of those who. So I didn't know her. Okay, I got to know her through Rajesh Gokhale, who is her advisor, and she was starting out. Rajesh was starting out, and he said, "Hey, why don't you chip in?" And I did. But beyond that, I don't understand anything. But she's trying to solve a really amazing problem, and I'm very confident that Ahamune will be a very successful company. I don't want to call them and count them in the unicorns category, but they will really make a difference to the people who have vitiligo. Actually, that's what they're trying to solve. Ganesh is a co-investor with me, and we are just impressed with how Parul has organized her whole thing and how she has taken it forward.
Excellent. So, your mentorship speaks a lot.
No, yeah, I mean, see, the thing is, one thing I want to mention here is that mentorship is all true. The fact is that, we are all sounding boards, basically. So we reflect things. So, and this is a good story that I have from Ashok, actually. Ashok tells the story very nicely. So he was in a party, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase this. He was at a party. Some guy came, a student from the past, came and touched his feet and said, "You changed my life." Ashok says, "Who are you? I don't even remember what I said to change your life." And the guy says, "Well, it changed my life. I'm now wherever." It's great, it's nice. So it's not about what he told him, but what he learned, right? So it's a function of what people pick out of it. So mentorship is not that I mentor you. It's I tell you what I feel like and you pick up what is appropriate for you. So that's really what it is. And that's how I see my mentors as well. So I go to someone, I'm telling them stories, they tell me stories. And then I abstract out what is relevant for me and I take it forward.
That's a great takeaway, Anand, for all the entrepreneurs. So we'll move to something very interesting now. If you were 30 years old again, right, what would you be doing? What excites you now? And, what is it that Ganesh said next 30 years, 40 years? So I keep hearing about a lot of long-term, investments or areas that you're looking for. I kept hearing from even Sridhar that, you've stayed with data. You're a scientist by design and you focused on one area from day one. So I want to hear more about it.
Okay, so data is something that my BTech thesis was on databases, right? So I've been in the data area since I would say 82, 83. So a long time now. And I've stayed current, I stay up with people and I stay in technology in that area. And right now I have two interesting data projects, actually three of them, but one I have now moved off on. Somebody else is running it, so I don't need to do it. But two other ones that I'm tracking. One is I'm working with a group of cancer scientists in India to try to set up what I call the ICG, which we call it ICGA Foundation, which is the India Cancer Genome Atlas. And the idea is that, and I sincerely believe this, that in healthcare is going to be a big issue. We in India, we need our own data for our own problems. We don't collect enough good quality data for our own problems, and we blame everyone else for it. If research has to happen, research needs data, and we need to create that good quality data about us, our activities, so that we can do good research on it. So that's the basic premise. So I'm working with a bunch of people on cancer data. And the other one that I'm starting to work on is around diabetes and data. So I'm working very closely with a group which is led by RSSDI, which is the Research Society for Study of Diabetes in India. And again, trying to see how to get the data together so that we can do research against these cancer data sets. And I'm more interested in now looking at these applications of data being relevant. And I really think that data for public good and all of these things become very interesting at this moment. So this leads me to the next point I'm going to take you into out of this is that, see, I'm quite fascinated by this, the value-based internet, that the Web 3.0 or the stuff that is coming around NFTs and other things where, you can get this data that you have can be worth something, because how do you monetize it? The ability to make micropayments, the ability to sort of divide your tokens into what is fungible, what is not fungible. How do you distribute all this sort of value of what you're bringing in into the network, and how do you hold on to it, and how do you do it through this programmable money business? So this is something that I think is going to be the next 5 years. It's going to be pretty exciting on that. I think there's a lot of hype at the moment, which will kind of fade in another year's time. But after the hype is through, I think we're going to be left with a very, very rich value-based internet, which I think is going to be pretty exciting. So I would really, really look at this as a place to go. And I find some of the data projects I'm going to go will evolve into that area. And as I said, this is an area I'm working on right now, and I'll be happy to do another 3-hour tutorial on this topic. But I am really convinced that this is where things are going to be happening. The other area that I would invest in today is in biology. I think the next generation of stuff, this whole CRISPR and all the other things that are happening around this stuff, I'm very fascinated by the what can be done. And I feel that in India, we are sort of not taking this as seriously as we ought to. So I believe that if you look at the Moore's law and you look at a similar law here, it's called the Miller's law, I think, which is similar idea where, the genome sequencing at the pace at which it's going and all of that stuff is very different right now. And I believe that in India, we haven't done enough to invest in this next level of stuff. So what happened to the IT industry in 30 years from 0 to 200 billion? I think the next 200 billion can happen in the biology industry if we do a few things right in the next 3 to 5 years. We may not have more than that in terms of the time we have. So I think I'm very fascinated by the potential and what can happen in this area. And of course, artificial intelligence is something that's going to be the overall theme is going to be in the veins rather than being a project. So it's AI is going to be part of everything that we do. And, so it will not be called AI anymore. But that's the way AI is, right? Meaning once it becomes common, then it's something else, and we have to call something else AI. So that phase will continue. This is a computer science joke, but yeah, meaning that's the way it is.
So Anand, we're also going through some really tough times, the COVID times, and I keep hearing about a lot of data collections that's happening. Is there something you did which was very research focused, or something that would make pandemics get better in a longer term, or understand them better and what's going on? Something that's very relevant, or any other area that you want to talk about?
No, so I have not been personally driving. I'm not on the forefront of some of these areas at the moment, though I did use my network to bring in people together to do some of these kinds of things. And I've been part of, so right now I'm the vice president of the chamber at the moment, the Maratha Chamber of Commerce. And Sudhir Mehta is our leader, and he is relentlessly driving the PPCR mission. We are all supporting him. He is our leader, and I'm very happy to be available to him and to the team for whatever is needed. And I've been using my network to the extent it's useful. But really, I'm really helping out more than doing anything personally on my own. Similarly, on the research and data side, I did, when we got started, did introduce the team of from the Pune Knowledge Cluster to a bunch of people, and some of them have done fabulous work. So I don't want to take credit for anything really that is happening, except for the fact that I'm very delighted to have been associated with them.
No, so there are few students also in the group, and any message from their career perspective, or of course what you said you would be doing when you were 30 years old, but any areas of course healthcare you talked about, but any key messages for them you want to leave with?
See, if you really look far out, climate change is going to be a big issue. Food, water, health. Those are the main issues that we're going to have to deal with 10 years from now. Right now, we are all sitting on a very different kind of a situation, but that's where the real action is going to be needed in the future. So everything is going to come down to saying, how do we put it all together? And I think if I'm a young kid right now looking at big problems, there is a lot of things to do. And climate change, how do we manage various things, or some of those areas is what I would look at as a young guy. But I wouldn't worry too much about trying to think about solving the world's problem or world hunger today. If I'm a 24-year-old, I would say, okay, how do I learn as well as I can? How do I make sure I hang out with the right set of people? So the chance of success depends very directly with the kind of people you hang out with. So that is very important. And I must say, kudos to NASCOM and others. These are all communities which are very friendly, and if you show up at the right place and you are in the right situation and you are willing to chip in and contribute, you get to network with a lot of very good people, and that's what makes a difference. So I would encourage every young people to say, no, don't just think about your current job, but think about how you are, part of the community. And to take something from the community, you have to give first, is something that everyone should remember.
I think that's a great message, Anand. To take back, one should be, willing to give in. I think that's very important, and creating a network of, people to learn and work with is very, very crucial. So I think, we are almost through with the time, but we've got quite a few guests. You want to ask some question in next 5 minutes, and then we will wrap it up. But anything you want to quickly shoot or bring up about Anand, go ahead. I think there are few.
Can we get a word of wisdom from Dr. Phatak, please? I've never seen Dr. Phatak so silent for so long.
Sir, you're mute.
Sir, you're mute.
Ganesh, that is very, very unfair. You have taken far more time from me than many others. So that is not very fair statement. Anyway, I have nothing to add. I just wanted to add one thing, because when we spoke about mentoring, what many people don't know is how he has mentored so many people. It is the people who have worked for him in the early days, in the later days. It is the people whom he comes in contact with. I'll just give you one example close to my heart and my family. My own son, who worked with Persistent in the early years, he's now, of course, doing something else. He's a CEO for some company doing genome sequencing. But I recall having mentioned to him in the presence of my wife that, Aditya, I see less of me in you and more of Anand. And he smiled and he says, isn't that natural? Because he is the one I worked with. So I automatically learned from him. You know, this kind of mentorship which happens intrinsically. And Anand actually loves to do it without realizing it himself, nor letting others realize this. He's an amazing mentor. And those who have been in contact, I mean, to a large extent, I have been mentored by him, if you recall the example that I quoted. And I'm sure Sridhar will also agree. So this is one side which I thought I would like to mention at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so
there
much.
is one more thing I want to say.
Please go ahead.
Part of this mentoring, I know so many people who have worked with Anand say, "Yaar, Anand jab पूछता है ना, ना नहीं कर सकते." Very difficult to say no. I don't know what he does, but that happens all the time. Vinay is smiling. I know what he's thinking.
Oh no, he's been a guru all throughout. I mean, I think the best learnings were when, as Anand said, right, I would always volunteer to be chauffeur whenever he was in Boston. So, the best learning is getting in from the car, and he would sit in a rickety car and, best times in, on the front end. So absolutely been a great guru for many of us, Aditya included. We spent a lot of time with him in Persistent.
Interestingly, he has been a guru to a lot of people and he doesn't even know it. He was that example he gave earlier, so a lot of people have learned a lot from.
I agree with you on that, Ajay. The whole point was also to scale it, right? Meaning, how do you be available to more people without having to sort of get intrusive in some ways?
Some issue.
He doesn't know that. He doesn't have to know that.
No. Thank you so much. So I think we are pretty much through with the time. I've seen a lot of questions, but I think, Anand, we've answered most of them. Of course, there have been requests in terms of how do they reach out to you, but I think most
of you can always send mail to me, right? The best way to reach me is to send me email. I'm anand@persistent.com. That gets read by me, and I tend to reply to most mails. If you don't get a reply, just send another reminder, So that's as simple as that.
Perfect. So
I value persistence.
Absolutely. And thanks, Anand, for making it for this session. It's been a great learning and experience for all of us. Of course, thank you